David Pearl, 79 Main Street. Either this was signed and he lied, or someone else is lying. Those were the words that were spoken by the chair of the Hooksett Police Commission on April 21st, 2009. The chairman was referring to a memo written by Officer DeFina. It seems one way or the other, a Hooksett police officer has lied. So an investigation was started. The problem is, now it seems that that investigation had nothing to do with that memo. On May 19th, I asked about the scope of the investigation, and the chief said, and I quote, basically, the wording of the chairman used that night when he said that's what he wanted investigated, that's what was relayed to the sheriff's department. So that is where their focus is, and that's where their starting point should be. June 16th, J.R. Willett asked, is there any resolution to the internal investigation regarding the DeFina memo? The chief said that would be part of the sheriff's investigation. August 18th, referring to the sheriff's investigation report, I said, in reviewing the report, does the report answer the question? I was referring to the lying about the memo. Mr. Gagnon said, I do not believe on that specific memo. I said, obviously it is an important question to you as you're the one that asked it. Can we have follow-up on that? Mr. Gagnon replied, absolutely. September 15th, I said, at the last meeting, you told us that you would look into the issue of the fourth DeFina memo and who was lying about that. Have you done that? Mr. Gagnon said he had not received a copy. September 15th, J.R. Willett asked, I was wondering if you had made a formal request to the sheriff's department. The chief read a letter stating the scope of the investigation, and I quote, did any member of the Hooksett Police Department intentionally try to cover up the existence of safe school reports regarding the Colley School or safety issues at the Hooksett School?
We're done with the DeFina questions in the comments.
Excuse me, that's my public input.
And I have a right to halt it. We are done with it. It's an open thing right now.
So
And
we're not done with it.
We are.
This is my public input. Do I not have 5 minutes to speak?
And I have the right to stop it.
I ask for a vote of the board.
Take a vote.
As far as I'm concerned, we're not discussing Officer DeFina anymore. He chose to go to the Public Employees Labor Relations Board. As far as I'm concerned, that's the end of the story.
I'm not asking for information about Officer DeFina. If you'd let me finish my statement, I would be able to pose my question.
Are you?
My question is,
Hold it. Are you?
I guess the problem I have is that, I don't know, we're going on and on and on. Is there a question that can be framed or something that can be submitted to?
I have my question right here.
Okay, that can be submitted to the chair so that we can get some response, because I too, like you, want to put this to bed. I don't want to keep on regurgitating the same thing over and over again. So, and I recognize the fact that this is a public input and you have the right to ask the question, and I respect that, and I respect people that come up here and have questions to ask. But by the same token, if it's a question that's already been answered.
It hasn't been answered. And the chairman said he was going to look into it, and he never has gotten back to us. My question is, how did the letter we heard that went to the sheriff's department describing an investigation about safe school reports, how was that conformed from what the chairperson said that night, that he was going to investigate that memo? Did the chief alter the chairman's order?
Is that question on that?
This is not for submission. This is my verbal question, because what the chief read last week was not what Mr. Gagnon said on April 21st when he initiated that investigation. And again, the chief said that that's what he was sending to the sheriff's department. But we learned last month, only last month I learned, that the report had nothing to do with the memo. So my question is, as a citizen, which Hooksett police officer lied about the memo? If we're gonna write up people for lying, then we need to get to the bottom of this. And the chairperson said he was gonna look into this multiple times.
Well, I can't speak for him, and I don't mean to speak for the chair, but you know what would be helpful? If you do have that question that you want him, and that you say that he was supposed to get back to you, if you do have it, and you can frame it and submit it, I think, you know, we need to make it a point to, you know,
It's certainly, I believe it's in the minutes, it's on the videotape. I've asked it, we've asked it, it's never been answered.
I believe the sheriff's report said no one was lying, if I'm correct. Isn't that not what it said?
I asked you if the sheriff's
I
report.
just asked you a question.
I haven't seen the sheriff's report.
Why not? Everybody else has.
I don't know that, you've never presented it here.
It was made public.
I have never seen it. I asked you at a meeting if it referred to the memo. You said it did not. Those were your words. And my question then is, if it does not there need to be another investigation about the memo? That's what you said on April 21st, that someone was lying on that memo. That is a person's character. That's a person that's now been fired for this department, and we've never resolved that issue.
Why don't we just provide him with the sheriff's report and then
Yeah.
we'll go from there.
and
Well, actually, we shouldn't, because I don't believe they should have released it, because it was an internal investigation. Now, they chose to release it, so anybody that wants it, who already doesn't have it, should go talk to the sheriff's department. If you remember in talking with our council, that should not have been released by them. So for us to release it just because they did, doesn't mean if they did it wrong, we shouldn't do it wrong too.
What if it was already released? Does it matter at this point?
it becomes,
It's up to you,
it becomes a public document, and that's my
Let him
concern.
get it from all day.
My question is very simple. The chairman asked that the sheriff's department investigate the memo. What the chief sent to the sheriff's department was very different. My question is, how did that happen? Did you change your mind, Mr. Gagnon, and instruct the chief to do differently? Or did the chief take it upon himself to change the scope of that investigation? I think that's a serious question that needs to be answered in this department. Any other time when orders aren't followed in this department, there are serious repercussions.
I think the best thing to do is to take this question and to come back, you'll have to research it, and you have to research the fact whether or not that can be,
That will be yet another month. I was supposed to hear about this last month. That's when Mr. Gagnon told me that he had received a copy of the memo. He's also told me that, I have a quote here where he says he did not read the 3 prior memos up to the 4th memo, but yet was ready to start an investigation of the 4th memo. I can't believe that you wouldn't read 3 prior memos,
We
and
don't.
you're going to investigate the 4th one.
Okay. Anything else?
No, I'm just asking you to do your job, and I'm asking you when you're gonna get back to me, because I come here every week and use up my 5 minutes trying to get you to do things that you said you were going to do. And I'm fed up with it.
can we, excuse me, Mr. Ronday, could you write down those questions or submit them, okay? And I believe that the chair will find out and they will be submitted. I apologize, and I'm a commissioner here and I'm just as guilty.
I will submit them in writing.
Thank you.
Marble Wood, 3 Summerfair Street. At the last police commission meeting, the commissioner's attorney, Jim Higgins, was in attendance. The question was asked as to how much Attorney Higgins charged per hour, and he would not answer the question, and the commission stated that they did not know. I have invoices from the commissioner's attorney, Jim Higgins, as well as the chief's attorney, Liz Bailey. As per the detailed bill, Jim Higgins does in fact charge $200 per hour and appeared in almost daily contact with Cooksville Police over a 2-year period. The total for Jim Higgins' bill for April was $3,900. The total for Liz Bailey for April was $20,138.34. So the total legal expenses for the police department for the month of April 2008 was $24,038.34. far more than most departments, if not all, in this town spend in the course of a year. I have two questions for the chief. First, you stated in the past that you did not want laptops in the patrol cars connected because the officers could run inappropriate searches. Isn't there a protocol in place as to why and when a search can be run? And is this protocol the same for every member of the department? And my second question is that you've stated many times that you have a higher standard with regard to the hiring process as compared to other police departments. Could you explain why you're even considering hiring a police officer who has been fired from another agency for lying?
Go ahead.
On the first question, there are protocols, and we'll abide by those protocols.
And it's the same for every member of the department? Okay. And as far as the second question?
That would be a personnel issue, and that would not be discussed.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Want to talk? Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry? It's public time, yeah.
Even a few administrative things to discuss with you, I'll seek some clarification over and make a request for it. I would like to know what the legal citing of was of the RSA statutes that was used to decide the justification of the appointment of an ad hoc replacement police commission, or any other rule or regulation of the police commission bylaws that the commission based its action on its September 28th meeting.
I will answer that.
Okay, I don't want to take it about
I'm
5
going to make a
minutes.
statement
No,
on
won't
that.
take into your 5
Thank you.
minutes.
No,
We'll
I won't
mind
count
you.
it.
Thank you.
At a previous notice, public meeting, the Hooksett Police Commission, we appointed 3 substitutes to hear the grievance of Jason DeFina. We took this action pursuant to the authority granted to the commission by Chapter 412, Laws of 1975. As the Teamsters Union has brought a charge of unfair labor practice concerning this action, we will not comment further on it at this time, other than to indicate our firm belief that the action we took was lawful and appropriate.
Thank you. RSA 412, you said?
No, Chapter 412,
Chapter 412 of
Laws of 1975.
Okay, thank you. I would also like to know if you've read any of my submitted questions from the August 18th meeting, and when I can expect the answers to those questions.
We are working on those, actually.
Thank you. I saw on the agenda that you have here questions from the public. Is that what you're going to be addressing now?
I
Yes.
believe so.
Yes.
I also wanted to now address the chief's review for tonight, because I'm fascinated by reviews. I've done hundreds of reviews myself in my full-time job as well. I wanted to stress to the commission here that reviews are very important. They're just not a rote document, not just a pat on the back to go by for tomorrow's another day. It's a very important thing in examining the chief's strengths and weaknesses and to categorize his effectiveness or lack of it in various aspects of his job. Honest and effective job evaluations are not just an attaboy, like I said, or a routinely expected pat on the back. They are effective, positive, and negative performance reviews of one's ability to do the job in service of the people. The person receiving the review incorporates the positive feedback into his work habits and attempts to change and eliminate those negative habits identified by the reviewer as opportunities for improvement. It would be a disservice to the citizens if the chief's evaluation review is nothing more than a rote document without any substantive opportunity areas for suggested improvement and growth. The commission needs to look at all these job performance deficiencies that the public has seen this year, and many more not mentioned, if they are doing justice to the town's evaluation of his review. I also want to request, there's been several statements recently about publicly reviewing confidential information of people's personnel files. Now, I don't want to get into Officer DeFina's issues at all. I just want to state, as a matter of policy here, that other policies have been stated here in public, in statements, in the newspapers, by you and the chief, Mr. Gagnon, that the chief had stated that it's okay to discuss confidential information regarding the termination of an officer in the public as long as it's not in the personnel file yet, and it has not been put into his personnel file yet. Mr. Gagnon also stated in the newspaper this week that although it is a personnel issue and he shouldn't be discussing it, he did divulge the reason for his termination, Officer DeFina's termination. As a result of that, I would like to seek the opportunity, the same opportunity and consideration by herein submitting a right-to-know request of the commission to seek out and obtain the complete, full, and unredacted full copy and version of the Police Commission's current job performance evaluation review to be performed on the police chief tonight at the non-public meeting. I'd appreciate your consideration on that. I have copies of this official right to request.
What was the request again?
I would like a copy of his evaluation once it's performed, before it goes into his personnel file, as stated by the chief. I would also like now to, as a right to know request this past week, I also offered a right to know request of the chief, which he very graciously offered back to me, a copy of a blank template of which you perform your evaluations. Because I was very curious on that, because as I do that on my other regular job as well, so I was just curious as to what the form looks like. It was requested of me after that. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with it, but I was hoping to do an agenda thing. But I know you're against doing citizen agendas. So what I did instead for now, just as a matter of curiosity, is I posted the job review that you perform on Chief of Grafiotis on Hookshot Issues. And just as an informational kind of thing for yourselves, I wanted to see what 2 days worth of reviews by normal citizens, as you are as well. You are citizen-based police commissioners picked out of the normal public performing these reviews. I thought you'd be interested to see what other citizens have said and marked down as a review of the chief prior to you giving it to him in non-public tonight. Thank you very much for your time.
Any more public input?
Yes. As far as protocol goes,
Please state your name and your address, please.
okay, Margaret DeFries, District 3, Corvo Drive. Will you answer my questions if I ask you questions? How does this work? I just...
To a certain degree.
Well, it's just a lot more formal than I anticipated it was going to be. I'm here tonight because we've had a rash of burglaries on our street. And we as a neighborhood, there are 31 homes on a 1-mile dead-end street. And they're very bold break-ins, in my opinion. And we would like some guidance from the town police department on things that we can do to be proactive in protecting ourselves. Whether that's an organized watch type thing. I know there are several programs out there for communities, for police departments to adopt it, and I'm looking for some guidance. Several people have alarms. Most people have dogs. I mean, there are things people are doing. They're being more observant. We have neighbors who actually walk with a pen and paper and have called in license plates, and an arrest has been made. I mean, things have happened over the past, but we want some guidance as to what we can do to be proactive. One of the concerns is being on Corvo Drive, the police coverage on the west side. I mean, someone can go from Corvo Drive, a quarter of a mile, go down Goffstown Road, and be in Bow, Dunbar, and Goffstown, and police coming up Packet Hill from the other side of the river. There's no chance. I mean, so I'd like that issue addressed. I don't know how much coverage there is on the west side. I'd like to see more, and I'd like to know what you can do, what we can do with your guidance, and be proactive in protecting our community.
Steve?
Look, we're going to be discussing tonight,
On the agenda.
just a little bit on the agenda, about neighborhood watch and some other issues like that. So in general, we're going to have a discussion in a little while about that. Specifically for your neighborhood, what I would do is ask you to call Captain Cecilia. What we do is we do it neighborhood by neighborhood, depending on what the issue is. So we're going to discuss in a little bit some blanket ways to look at it, but as far as specific issues in the neighborhood, we like to talk one-on-one with the people from that neighborhood, because every burglaries and crime sprees are different, so there's not a...
Well, I think what she's asking, Steve, is what can they do other than what they're doing to prevent or help?
Well, that ties in. The other part is it, if I were to call the police department, I mean, I heard a rumor just this morning that there was another burglary yesterday. I know no proof of that. Was there another one, in fact? That came from a police officer, but couldn't give me the address, but it was on my street. Well, whose house was it? I mean, is it legal for me to find out whose house got robbed on my street, or is that confidential? How does that work?
Again, call the detectives because they are assigned to do the investigation, so they have all the information about any of the burglaries. And that's why we say we try to work with people in neighborhoods specifically, because the MO in one neighborhood may not be the MO in another neighborhood.
So is my neighborhood assigned a particular detective that would be my contact? Is that how
No,
it
you
works?
call it the detectives, and whatever detective is handling that case, in the shuffle how it goes, you would then be referred to that person.
So if we were to get organized and had a group of us, would an officer come and speak to us as a group?
Well, that's what we're going to be discussing here in a little bit, as far as how we can start approaching that with the resources we have.
I don't want to wait. I want it done within a week. Is that
Well, I don't think so. The best thing for the short term would be to call the detectives during the day and find out, first talk to the detective that has been assigned your case. And then that person can look at your case and the other cases in your neighborhood to see what the MO has been for your neighborhood, for the issues in your neighborhood, and then can give you some pointed short-term ideas to help you.
When you discuss this later on, will I be able to speak, have input as part of that discussion?
That's up to the chair.
That's what the chair.
And I ask that because I have been doing some research on various community type and police crime line type watch programs. And there's a lot of good information out there. And there's some things that I think would work in my neighborhood, but we would need the cooperation of the police department. And so I would want to be able to be part of that discussion if I felt that I had something to contribute.
I'd say it's up to the chair, but I'd say listen to the discussion and then see where your questions would
Do
fall
I
in.
raise my hand?
Yes.
Yes, you do,
Yeah.
and if that he feels that,
It would be David Gagan?
yes.
Okay.
No. So stay and listen to
Okay.
listen to what comes up on that, and then we'll see if any of that answers your questions, or we can take input from you, which we can add to that as a package.
Okay, and that's under old business?
Yes.
Can we get that moved up to after public?
We'll see if we can,
Up to the chair.
Mr. Chair? I mean, what are we looking at for a timeline in
Well,
waiting
our
for that
timeline's till
topic?
6:45, so the faster we move along, the
Right.
faster we'll get there.
Your first meeting.
believe us, be able to come up to the...
Your question, when you asked the officer, what house was it, so forth, and he didn't respond? If something to the investigation, you probably...
They're not going to give the details,
Right.
I just
but
wanna
also
know
with
the
the amount
house.
of with the amount of officers and the different shifts,
If it's being
they may not
investigated.
know the exact address also.
Sure.
They-
Sometimes
they
if something's
may not
under
have-
investigation, you just don't give it up.
Right, if it's under investigation, you know, but even the officer coming on the next shift may not know the exact address. They may know the neighborhood, but not the address.
Okay, thank you.
Any other public input?
Hi, Brian Williams, also on Corridor Drive. Same concerns as Margaret. Several years ago, I was on the budget committee. We put through a warrant article when Exit 10 was built to fund 5 more police officers, which was supposed to be for the west side. And I know things changed since then, and I've kind of lost touch when I started traveling a lot. But so what happened to that warrant article? Did the money get spent? Do we have the additional 5 officers? I don't know what happened. Can I just get an update on what happened to that?
Again, it was 2004, the warrant article was for 5 officers. The first warrant article was on 6 months, and then the next year was going to be for the 12 months of the salary.
Right.
We may have had only 1 year, if I remember right, when it might have been funded, but between the default budgets, we've never gotten up to the funding of the 29. And remember that 29 was the
29, yeah.
5 extra, which was the West Side Patrol. In the current budget we're in now, we had asked, like we had in past years, for the funding for 29 officers. The Budget Committee cut that back by 2 officers.
Okay, but we
So that's
still we should have part-time west side coverage.
Yes, yes, there is, yes, there is at times there is an extra officer on that we would hope at some point when it's up to staff and money would be all the time. But between sicknesses and schooling and all that, it happens sporadically.
I don't think it's as part-time as it used to be.
Yes, it's not as bad as it was before the warrant article.
Okay.
But it's not what we want to see ultimately, which was the reason for the warrant article, was to have 29 staff positions and to have the complement of officers around the clock that would incorporate 24-hour West Side Patrol.
Okay. When you go in front of the budget committee again this year, you know how to get a hold of me. Call me and I'll go with you and I'll, you know.
I believe that was for a dedicated car on that
Well,
side of the road.
normally what we had in the past was we had a north car, a south car, and the supervisor. The north car covered from
Right.
basically from the PD here north and then the whole west side. Obviously, the west side is not what it used to be. As the west side grew, and you remember from the budget committee days, was a discussion of trying to get, the exit 10 came in, but before the west side got so overpopulated, was to get the staffing needed, so the idea
But
was
was
to
it
have
not
south.
to have a dedicated car?
Right, north, it'd be north, south, and west, so you'd have 3 officers and a sergeant per shift. That's where the number 5 came out for the 2004 warrant article.
And now that you've got a Walmart and a Lowe's there, in addition,
Absolutely,
you
yeah,
really got to
absolutely,
get that
yeah.
number up.
Yep.
So let me know when that time comes and I'll come and.
I'm going to the budget committee, I'm the one that's going, so I expect you there.
You gotta give them notice so we
Yeah.
can
I will, Brian, I know how to get a hold of
I
you.
spend a lot of time out of the country, so you gotta give me a lot of.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
That's another reason why I want help on that side.
Anyone
Thank
else?
Hi, I'm Ginny Toland, and I too live on Corrigan Drive. I just thought I might as well speak up. I'm a victim. My house was broken into when we were away on Saturday night. We had people actually, supposedly, in our driveway during the day, a Comcast car, a Comcast van. And we had people out in the backyard, you know, on Friday, in broad daylight, you know, obviously, I'm assuming, specking out the house. They went through our front door, kicked our front door in. And it's just, it really, it's disturbing. So it's not just disturbing that it happened to me. You know, I feel lucky, we're here. You know, you lose a few things, you lose a few, but you've been totally, you know, violated. We had clothes, every single bedroom, all our clothes, everything were all over the place. I mean, it's disturbing. And what's more disturbing is to hear this morning that it happened yesterday, okay, again. And then less than 3 months ago, or right around then, it happened again. So I guess I'll put in the same bid as Margaret and this gentleman. I really would like to. It's obviously with what just has recently happened in Mount Vernon, and I'm not trying to panic here, you know, but I think we're going to see a lot more rise in it. There was just an article in the newspaper the other day that there were 40 arrests, you know, 40 break-ins, and arrest was made with more to come. You know, it was made in Derry, but there were 40 break-ins. That sounds like an uprise to me. And
Bedford had an article recently, today or yesterday.
How many have we had on Cornwall Drive?
well, this sounds like at least 3. And
I'm not having it.
Between 3 and 4.
Well,
The last one was Whitehall Terrace.
was there one yesterday on Corvo Drive?
Whitehall Terrace was the
oh, the
one that...
police officer
Okay.
told me this morning that it was, so that was,
No, we went through the logs. Whitehall
It
Terrace
wasn't-
was Whitehall Terrace.
He told me this morning, it was on
Okay.
our street as well.
it's still,
It is
Absolutely.
discerning,
It
yeah.
is.
it's discerning because, I mean, even to see in the paper, the union leader, you know, 40, you know, whether or not they were in Derry or they were, you know, there's a lot more of that going on. And if we could get someone over in the, I don't put in the blood, it really would help, maybe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
J.R. Wood, 3 Summerfair Street. It's my understanding over the past 6 years, there's been almost 400,000 of under-expended line items. Should that money be used for patrol officers?
Well, under expended lines doesn't guarantee you the funding for the following year. You could have an under expended line this year, and what would you do with that officer next year?
This is over the past 6 years I'm talking about.
I understand.
This isn't just 1 year.
I understand.
So the
But if
funds-
you use
the funding is
under
there.
expended funds, what happens next year if all the funds get expended? What do we do with that officer?
Maybe if I can ask a budget committee member, Are you talking about within a year, money that is not spent on other items to use for officers?
Absolutely.
Okay, are you talking new positions or overtime?
Just overall expense, I mean, your budget.
But I think there's an important rule here, and Brian's right here, that if you haven't appropriated for it, you can't spend with regard to items like that. You know, bringing on new officers.
Well, it's my understanding the funding has been here for the 29 officers. I don't know where the cut is that you're talking about. I'm going to go back and review that, because it's my understanding the funding has always been there.
No, it hasn't.
No, your committee took 2 positions out last year.
Well, the funding.
The funding,
Funding,
right.
because of the excess funds that the police department has had over the past 6 years.
But but if we start the year off at funding for 27, and we employ 29, that money is going to come from somewhere else, and it wouldn't be prudent, in my mind, to start spending that right out of the gate, and then be halfway through the year and find out that now we don't have the money to do the other lines for the rest of the year, because that wage line is being spent on the idea of having a staff of 29 sworn officers, yet it's funded for 27 sworn officers.
Well, it's my understanding that the funds, the available funds, the majority of it's coming from employment, salary. So I think we should take a look at that, because I think you're probably averaging, maybe, on a good day, maybe 26 officers. Take a look at the funding.
I think it's something to consider when we do the budget, to look at what we have the funding for and what we have received the funding for, and when we make our presentation, our proposal to both the budget committee and to the town, that, you know, if we need a substantial or even an increase of officers, that we make that pitch. I think you bring up a good point. But like I said, if you have not made the appropriation for that, you can't spend it. That's the rule. And I know Brian knows that better than anybody.
No, I understand what you're saying, but typically when the funding is there, you'll have the officers that you'll use up what's allocated for it. Unfortunately, on the average, you're really looking at about 26 officers, even though you funded for 29.
And I understand what you're saying, and you're right, but at the beginning of the year, you don't know what's going to be left, because you don't know what's going to happen. This year, for example, we had decided to hire more people, and we were going to forego one of the cars if that had to happen. You can't always tell, and I understand what you're saying. There has been plenty of money turned back in year after year, but on July 1st, you don't know that. And you can't hire somebody or have somebody on staff that isn't a planned fund. So for an officer, you would have to, if you were going to have them and the funds aren't there as leftover by the end of the year, you would have to forego something, whether it's 2 cruisers to fund 1 officer.
I agree with what you're saying, but if you're averaging 26 officers on an annual basis, and I think it may even be less than that. I'm going to go back and do some numbers on that. You could very easily have a dedicated car on the west side with what you have appropriated. And the other thing is admin, and I've said this in the past, admin is extremely high in this department. It's unlike any other department. I've done numbers on it.
Well,
nothing even close.
Done numbers in comparison
Yeah, as far as there's more admin here than patrol officers. It's been like that for many, many years.
I think it's something that when we do the budget that we have to explore and see what we would need to have adequate coverage on that side and look
We
at
have
it.
that discussion every year
Yeah.
at the budget time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, seeing none, we're going to move along.
We dispense with the
We're going to
minutes.
dispense with the minutes from the last meeting till the next meeting. So we
And-
can move this along.
Yeah, and if I could ask that, seeing that there are people here that are here primarily for that item under old business, could we take this agenda out of order and have that discussion now. Is that appropriate?
Well, can we go through town budgets quickly?
You can, I was going to actually suggest the same thing, if you just jumped
All
out
right,
of
well,
business.
Want to do it? All right, let's move it.
Thank
There are
you.
people-
If you jump down to, excuse me, if you jump down to old business, actually the lettering sequence got a little messed up on the agenda that everybody had.
And you already dealt.
But you already did with A, which was
so
the
that-
acting commission.
So that takes you right
so-
away to B, you're right there.
Yep, so we're right there for neighborhood. What did, those of you who were here last time in the commission, you remember we discussed the issue of neighborhood watch and what could or couldn't be done. Since the last meeting, had the detectives, and specifically Captain Cilio, talk to neighboring communities, see what they do, communities of our size and larger as far as the issues. And we presented, after some initial research, Captain Cilio presented a memo to me, which is in your packet, that explains the information that he had. And basically, to summarize that, what that amounts to is that in talking to neighboring communities, that the concept that most of us would know from the newspaper or whatever of a neighborhood watch is not a bad idea, but it is a hit and miss. And that the other agencies, other communities around us, Manchester, even Bedford and Goffstown are now looking at it, we'll talk about that in a minute, are looking at Crime Line. So since and that then possibly being more effective. So since the memo that commissioners you received, Captain Cilio has a update. He had a meeting with the Manchester Crime Line people, and I'll let him explain it briefly. But basically, what it looks like is that we have the opportunity as a community to join with Manchester Crime Line. Also, Bedford and Goffstown are also looking to do it too, because the reality is, and it's been this way for forever, is that Hooksett is more part of Manchester, if you will, than the rest of Merrimack County. The bad guys don't stop at the line. The spillover has always been there and probably always will be. It's just a fact of life. We've all dealt with it, and people that have been in the business know that's just a fact of life. So that's why a lot of the issues we deal with, detectives and other issues, we work with Manchester because we're all dealing with the same bad people out there. So that's where we are right now as a staff, and I'd like the captain to explain a little bit about what it would take to get us into that. But in reviewing the information, I think that what Crime Line out of Manchester incorporating them towns could do for us would probably, given the resources we have or don't have here, would be more effective than a neighborhood watch, a traditional neighborhood watch. Now that doesn't mean that we can't work, as I said to you, individually for neighborhoods, but not the traditional, probably not the traditional neighborhood watch that actually does take quite a bit of time from what we've been told from the other agencies, of officer time for meetings and all that. So we think we can hit it from a two-pronged point of view. So if it's okay with the commission, you already have that information. I'd like to ask the captain just to give an update, the next step, if you will, of what he learned from Manchester Crime Line and what we would be proposing we head forward on.
All right, Paul?
Well, in regards to neighborhood watches, and Crime Line is something we can do quick and easy. Does everybody know what Crime Line is?
Yeah.
Everybody familiar with that program? All right. We met with Manchester to see if they were willing, and they are excited about going regional, starting with us. We would have to have a voting member appointed to their board. There's going to be an initial startup cost. And then signs similar to this would be going up in our areas. We would use the same phone number. They would maintain the funds, and they would maintain the line. If they got a tip, they would forward it to our liaison officer, and then we would act on it. So that's a basic rundown. What we need to do is we need to appoint somebody that would be a full voting member on the Manchester's board, and would vote on all issues in Hooksett and in Manchester. And we get that initial startup cost, and from there they're looking at expanding into Bedford and Goffstown also. Right now they are in the process of changing their bylaws so that they can incorporate us. So, and as of their meeting last night, that's what...
What's our startup cost, Paul? Our startup cost?
It's going to be around $4,000, because their concern is that we would be paying out more for the tips than we're actually bringing in. I tried to explain to them that in the history that we've been incorporated with Manchester, Manchester has paid out for us in the past on tips that we've had that have come through them, but also helped with their crimes as well as ours. It was a burglary case.
How do we generate money for this going down?
Down the road, like I put in the memo, they would ask us to do some type of fundraiser once a year.
Okay.
And participate in like a jump off with them, trying to get the phone number out there in our area so that everybody can start calling that number and we can start getting the tips.
However, I would suggest at this point that if we are going to consider this, that we take money out of the budget and kick this off to get it going, so we're not having a drag time of a fundraiser and whatever. There will be a lot of information, there'll be a lot more work that has to be done on Crime Line as far as incorporating Hooksett and any other towns into the process. So it wouldn't be right away, but because the funding would take a lot longer than setting up the mechanics of it. So I don't want the process to drag because of the fundraising. So I'd like to use it from the budget when we're ready to, once we get the mechanics of our membership worked out.
All right. Joanne, follow that.
I guess just two things. I didn't know anything about Crime Line at all, and I went online to research it and to research about the Neighborhood Watch. And doesn't it, for some communities, isn't it basically the businesses that pay towards the Crime Line because it's in their best interest?
They can't.
Okay.
And one of the
And
things,
a lot of it must be in Manchester that way, seeing that a lot of areas,
Yep,
do
and
fall prey to that.
some of the things that did come up in that meeting was if they're approaching Hooksett businesses for donations, a lot of the Hooksett businesses don't want to join them because they're in Hooksett.
Right.
Oh, okay.
But that would change if the
So that
size.
change if we're on board with them using their services.
Okay. And the other thing that I wanted to ask, wouldn't it also be a good thing to do some neighborhood watch groups? Because I think, you know what it is? I think people need their awareness heightened to the fact of what is normal and what isn't. And like I said to you today, I'm ashamed that it happened in my neighborhood in broad daylight, and I didn't see it, and shame on me.
Like I've said in the past, if you call for a suspicious car, call.
Right.
They'll go check it out.
But I think the community itself needs to be made aware of that, and whether or not you do it in a one-night session, a workshop, or whatever for the community, but people need to know that there are certain things that they can do. And I think, I'm sorry, I don't know your name, but I mean, she said in her neighborhood that things were happening during the day, and that people were probably there to find out what was going on, what their habits were, or whatever. And I think that a lot of that would help. So I guess I like the idea of doing both of them to some degree, and I don't know how you would do that.
And I can agree with you, but we've already talked about a manpower issue here. And it takes 5 police officers to field one car 24/7. So to put one car on the road, you need 5 people due to vacation, sick time, rotations, days off. You need 5 people to fill that one car.
Right, and I think that's a budget thing that if that's...
That's fine. And if I put an officer on neighborhood watch, I'm losing manpower.
Paul, let me ask you a question. Could we not have like a public forum for a quick education type thing
that would be the easier.
Not so much a neighborhood watch, but a community watch.
Right.
If we got them all together, I don't know where.
We could talk to the library.
Library. The library would host it.
The library would host
That's what I meant by
it.
the-
We could put something together. You know, like I said, this is the first time I've heard, that they wanted something for the communities. And we've had this conversation in past meetings that we told you that crime's going to get worse.
Yeah, I know, and knowing that, maybe, that this is what to watch for, this is, it's simple as, this is where you call, this is what you say.
The community watch program we can look into later, but that's gonna take away from the manpower.
But I think
is up and running and
the crime
get it working
watch.
quicker.
We're looking for guidance, that's all. We're
Oh,
just
that's
looking for
fine.
guidance in terms of what we can do. We're not trying to place an additional burden on the police force at all.
I'm not saying that, I'm just, when you say a neighborhood watch,
Can we, you know, and that's, his point is valid, and it's more a quick way to get this rolling, where this is where we're having, this issue is now. It's
And-
not coming, it's now. Let's see if we can put something together, get it advertised adequately,
Yep.
and let's do it as soon as possible, sooner than
and
later.
you have my card.
The watch or
So
the
give me
crime
a
line?
call and.
Excuse me?
The watch or the crime line?
Well, right now, no, the community type meeting
Oh,
where
okay.
an advisory type thing.
Okay.
We can get back to crime line too.
Well, I'd like to get the commission's approval to go ahead with both. I mean, it's not that you have to give that approval, but the concept of the crime line as moving forward, and as I said earlier, we want to do some of both, the short term, what we just discussed here. And then we would start heading down both of those roads. Now, we do need to have a person at some point that is a liaison. My suggestion thought would be is maybe a police commissioner, because ultimately at some point it does play into service, or what hooks it gets back out of this program. You know, we'll put into the program what we get back out of the program. And as far as factors that are affecting, again, this is a regional issue, and that person could bring back, you know, what's happening in other places that may or may not be affecting our community. And when I'm trying to present the budget to commissioners who are then taking it forward, it would be a lot easier if somebody on the commission already understood what they were hearing from their neighboring communities of like size and the city on the spillover. I think we'd be that much more ahead of the game, knowledge-wise.
All right. Henry?
Paul, you made a statement. Once we're on board with Crime Line, it said we would be responsible for soliciting funds or have some type of fundraiser once a year. Do you have any kind of feel? Are they looking for the amount of money they paid in to come back in to make it a wash, or do you have any kind of a feel for what we'd have to raise?
Not really. It all depends on what we're spending going out. Their concern, they've been up and existing for many years, and some of the concerns they had were, now they're taking Hooksett on.
Yeah.
Okay, now they're going to be paying out funds that they fundraised over the
Right.
years.
Yeah.
You know, and I can see that concern. And what I told them was, I can't see what we're paying out, but we don't have this in effect.
Yeah.
You know, we don't have a tip line here in effect running right now, so I really can't project what we're going to be paying out.
But conceivably, if they paid out $4,000, they'd probably like to see us raise $4,000.
Correct.
But I think that should
Make it a
be,
wash.
this should be pretty easy once it takes effect. I think we're being short-sighted here. I think the community will rally to support this. So let's see where that goes. But
Just a question for the chief. Legally, do we have the right to expend $4,000 for that? Do you know?
We do have a...
Do you have a community service line?
Okay.
Okay.
all right,
That would overspend that line, but, you know, it's a bottom line budget, so...
motion.
I make a motion that we fund, what, 4,000?
Well, maybe if I could suggest a motion that we move forward with investigating Crime Line
I think
project.
that's more appropriate, right?
Second, we move forward with a neighborhood awareness meeting, at least the first one, to get it off the ground. And then I think we're going to end up tweaking from there, but maybe get us all together and maybe both sides learn what you need to hear from us. And then the third part would be...
Too many parts there. What are we moving forward with the crime line? What else do we need to investigate that hasn't been done?
Concept and approving the concept, which includes the funding that we'll take care of.
Well, I guess that was the motion. That was standing behind the motion, is to move it forward and fund it if we're joining.
Can we do it with we need a dollar figure or not to exceed?
No, I would. There's a dollar figure there. It was 4,000, correct?
That's what I talked to them about today. Like I said, they have a meeting the first Wednesday of the month, and I asked them for a figure, and that's one of the figures they threw out.
Do we think it could change?
I would hope that we could get it lower, but
Well, all right, not to, look, it's your motion, I'm not gonna
Not
change
to
it.
exceed 4,000.
Whatever you want. I mean, again, we're at the tip of this.
Right,
I need a little leeway so we can get us going with it, but not enough that you're uncomfortable with it.
And it's not so much that I'm uncomfortable, I'm sorry, I should ask to be recognized. It's not so much that I'm uncomfortable with it, but I think there are questions that still need to be answered, okay, before we jump in with both feet.
What questions?
You know, whether or not we have to replenish the 4,000 and how, what the scale is
But it's
for the tips and whatnot. And
Well, you're actually both correct. You're correct, and that's why but we didn't want
it
to.
needs to be vetted out to a certain degree.
Exactly, but I wanted the permission to let us continue to do that, but also the understanding on your part that there was a money aspect to it also. I hate to vet out the process and then be told, I don't want you to spend any money for that, and then we wasted the time. So it's kind of giving us the go-ahead to vet it out, but also with the understanding that if we come back next month or in 2 months or whatever, and we work something out, and it's up to whatever the limit of the thing is, that somebody isn't saying, what are you doing?
I guess I would incorporate that into the motion that was made by Butch, that to vet it out and that we give them an amount. That's not holding them back, but by the same token, the expectation is that it does. And also, I think the request that was made to have that meeting, that community meeting.
That's a second one.
Oh, it's the second? I thought it was all rolled in. I apologize.
Let's stay with the first one.
Okay, I apologize.
You haven't modified,
You got all that first.
Say it one more time, go ahead. I have it all around.
go ahead.
I make a motion that we proceed with the investigation of Crime Line with a figure not to exceed 4,000
At this time.
at this time.
And that the chief would get back.
Absolutely.
All right, we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then the subsequent motion is to have that community-wide, is that what you want, meeting?
Yeah, let's call it a community-wide.
Informational meeting.
How can we phrase that?
Question and answer.
community awareness meeting,
Okay, I'll take that word.
Okay.
Community.
and I'll talk to the union leader and Savannah, see if we can't get it posted somehow through the paper, and then I'll talk to the library, see if we can use their room. If not, I'll try to reserve the media room for a night.
I think that'll
More this time,
I think you're gonna get more than you think.
I agree, I'd rather have the library, but
If we can't get the library, we'll have to use one of the schools.
You'll
just
get the
in
library.
case.
Just give us enough notice, you'll
All
get the
right,
library.
thank you.
Yeah, take us
And
a little-
also, if you can send the information to Heather, she'll put it on our
website,
website.
right?
okay.
All right,
The town's
so
website. So we have some work to do on
work
it.
that
so
out,
definitely
but
move forward.
let's do it sooner than later,
Yeah.
please, so we can at least help these people out.
Would you call for a vote on the motion?
I just got finished
Okay.
talking about it.
Okay.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. What would you like to do next, Joanne?
I have a silly question. Can I ask it?
That's up to the chair.
On this, on,
On the neighborhood watch thing?
okay, go ahead.
Is it feasible to post the neighborhood watch signs at the beginning of like our street or
It's
whatever?
not gonna be neighborhood watch signs, they're gonna be crime line signs.
Right, we've talked about doing both, but I'm just saying, the idea that whether we have that actually in place or not, but maybe the signage would deter people thinking they don't know whether you really got the program or not? I don't know.
As we move
Just
forward,
something-
there would be signs.
It would be the crimes.
Right, but we have to
dot.
work with Manchester because we just can't grab your signs and pull them over. Plus, I believe they're going to maybe be some wording changes, and maybe Manchester Regional or something like that, so.
And they're producing the signs, are they not, Paul? They're gonna,
They're still in the working on the template. Like I said, we had meetings.
But are they gonna pay for the signs, or are we?
We would pay for our own signs, and it's unclear whether or not we would use the 4,000 startup money to take it. Like I said,
And that's part of the investigation.
Yeah, and I don't have a problem.
And if they're going to use the same template
Manchester sign.
as everybody else. So like I said, they wanted to make sure that we're still willing to go forward, and 2 weeks from now, I'm not saying, yeah, you know, thanks, but.
Yep, now you have the answer to that.
All right.
Quickly.
I'll be quick. Is it feasible to have, I mean, there's 31 houses on my street. I can get 31 emails. I would like to keep my neighborhood updated as to what's going on. This, what we've talked about, the crime line, the neighborhood meeting, great information. What I'd also like to be able to give them is that, you know, another incident has happened, you know, again during the day, whatever the MO is. Can the police department keep in touch with the citizens to notify us what's going on? And I ask that because in my research of these community type programs, the more informed and the faster you can get the reports of these crimes out, these incidents go down.
Okay. One question for you. You usually read the paper, right?
No.
No.
No, I don't.
I think I have partial. In the past, we've looked here through emergency management with like a reverse 911 system. However, that has never flown at the town level. So that's one of those ones where you read about in other communities where if something happens, whether it's a crime issue, a flood issue, a storm issue, the information can get sent from the town back out. And on that information, in Raymond, we have the public television, which stuff like that could be on it. We don't have any of those things here, and they keep failing through the process. So
part of this community informational meeting, I mean, if like we have districts, I'm District 3, I mean, however you want to break the town down, if you had contact people where maybe the person at the department was responsible for informing the neighborhood and the information was disseminated that way, just like you run a business from the, you know, through the,
Maybe we can bring that up
departments.
at the
And that doesn't cost any money.
No, I'm open to suggestions. Our logs are, you know, out here you can come and look at the public log every day. The newspaper, union leaders offer the public log every day. If they have questions, they call me, and I get them the answers that they need on any cases they have questions. The problem is getting a media to get you the information.
Email.
Town website.
Yeah, well, we're looking into the website. I wish we had it.
Now, please put a link on the town website.
You can create an email list for free if people want to sign up for it. Google Group, it's absolutely free.
No, we did doing a little bit of research that way, but
those are suggestions.
Suggestions. I'm open to all suggestions. You know, if, like I said, my problem is getting the media to get you the information. And like I said, that's something we're gonna have to work on later.
Let's move this along so we get to some other stuff before we have to go. We're not going to ignore that. We'll find, there's got to be a way, even at that advisory meeting, maybe we can come up with some suggestions. I don't know, who's our computer guy here? Yeah.
Well, John's kind of, huh? Yeah, it depends on what issue, but John's kind of a liaison, but not a computer to get it down.
Is that some sort of email thing? I mean,
And you're not talking to the staff.
I'm sure somebody could lead us on how to do that there.
I think if you remember, that's why we looked at the reverse 911 system years ago, because that was not just a police issue, it could be a fire issue, it could be whatever, rather than just us put in money for one thing, and then somebody else put in duplicate money for the same thing, it would cover all bases.
All right, let's move along. Where are we going?
Where are you, like, you want to go back up to your minutes?
No, we're skipping the minutes.
Budget?
Yeah, go with budgets.
Okay. You have the town and the police budget reports in front of you. The report you have is week 13 of 52, which is 25% of the year, and the police commission, police department is expended at 19.11% as of the date of this report. Any questions on the current budget?
Now, the only thing that I have to add with regard to it, that I find, I don't know if the Budget Committee had asked those questions, but the letter that you sent to the Budget Committee about why the lines were, I found that very, very helpful, and I think that when we develop our budget, that we need to have some discussion about that, and probably will take into play as to what some of the requests are going to be.
That's what we usually do,
Right.
and I was going to get to that in a minute.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine, that's going right into it. Any questions, though, on the report on the current budget report you have?
Right. The only thing that I don't know how you do this, and this is a fallback from what the school did, and you're not that far in your budget right now to be at a point that you're overexpending lines. I would like to know where you were using the money from what line. What we did was we did a transfer of appropriations from one line to the next, and that was a motion, so that you know where you're taking it from, so that, you know, at the end of the year, it's not, I'm not going to say a misstatement, but there's a better understanding of where those funds came from to accommodate that.
Right, well, you remember from the class we went to, you can either do the line item transfers or not. We've chosen in the past not to do them. So as we watch the bottom line, so when we get something, the line that's coming close, we know from looking at the other lines and our looking ahead on a weekly basis, our review of the budget, that the bottom line is okay, not necessarily where else it's coming from.
Right.
So we don't do the transfers because my experience has been with transfers is that you do have the record of where the transfers came from as the law allows, but by transferring money around, then at the end of the year, it's harder to have that type of report because you move money around to make the lines look
Well,
good.
we were generating a report quarterly, okay, and that's when we were making the transfers. And what it did was it alerted the board members about some lines that we either, you know, over appropriated money, put too much in those lines, and some lines that we didn't. So, you know, it kind of kept us more aware of the, you know.
To be honest, I'm not sure that you have that lack of information because you can look at the especially the budget report that Francine gives you, and you can look across to the lines percent expended compared to where we are in the year.
Right.
And you can see, and then we can answer the questions either at this meeting or anytime any of you call of where we're at and what we may, as history goes on, what we might believe is going to be underexpended as best we can guess, without actually delegating a line because we're still sticking to the bottom line. And the problem that we have, I think, too, in emergency services, you never know what's going to happen.
Right.
So, you know, we could sit here tonight and say one line is getting close, or 6 months from now, one line is getting close. We think we're going to take it from here. That may not happen because the next day something may happen that throws that all out the window.
Right.
So,
Well, they
we're more
only
focused
came in
on-
with it, they only came in with the final report for approval when they had made that decision to do that, and there was a motion that followed it.
Right, but we don't, because we don't even do the transfers, we don't have to do that, we just watch the lines.
It's just a thought, and like I say, you know, it made people more aware of where some of the expenditures truly were, and like I say, when you're doing the budget, you could go back and refer and say, wait a minute, there's not enough
Right, well, that's what we do.
in the salary line. So, you know, however way we choose to do it, it was just a thought. Thank you.
All right, next.
Next, going into the next year's budget proposal, 2010-2011, we're working hopefully to get that to the commission, my first draft, beginning of next week. What I need the commission to do is we need to set up some possible dates for meetings for you to, you will receive in delivery, but to then have your first meeting for discussion of the proposed budget. Joanne, you and I separately have to sit and go over last year's, this year's, and all that prior to that meeting, and then the board having time to have their first discussions of the line. So I don't know if you all want to think about some different dates between now in the next couple of weeks and get to call into me or Francine with some dates and we can try to get a schedule rather than do it right now, but that's how we normally do it. Is our separate meeting.
Tuesdays we usually try to keep it, so let's try to plan on a Tuesday.
That works for me.
You want to try to hit next Tuesday then as the first night for you to have a meeting to look at the first draft of the budget.
That's fine with
Okay.
me. Thank you.
If I could? The council, the last council meeting, the intent of the council, the consensus was to level fund the budget. In other words, to be on an even keel with this year's budget. Even though the consensus was unanimous, the reality of it is if we kept the budget absolutely flat with last year, we would probably get at least a 5% increase in the tax rate. Because the revenue side is dramatically down, and we just got informed this week that the insurance cost is looking at a 20% increase in premium.
Health insurance 20%, dental 5%.
That is mind-boggling. So it's going to be a very, very tough year.
Is that, Mr. Loisel, is that exclusive of increases in wages? You know, if there's contract negotiations, is that exclusive? I know there was a...
You can't. The contracts are in place, the contracts are in place.
No, I don't mean, but I mean if you're negotiating. Because there was a lot of discussion back and forth last year or the year before whether or not it was inclusive or exclusive.
Well, one thing I can throw in there is, as many people know, our contract, the current CBA ends June 30th, and we're in negotiations now. When we figure our budget going forward, if to keep with the level funding you wanted to, or the different committees wanted to leave the non-union people at 0% increase, you can. However, under that new Evergreen law, we do have to, even without a CBA being in place, figure the step increases through. So you're going to see that anyway. So the step increases for the union people have to be figured into there because of that Evergreen clause, so-called. So that will be in there to begin with.
So you got to compensate someplace else.
Exactly.
Right. Well, I guess I would ask if the council could have a discussion and clarify that. That really would help.
All right.
So next Tuesday. And Paul already brought up what I was going to bring up about that. I sent you, as Joanne already talked about it, the Budget Committee on September 22nd had asked for some initial information about last year's budget. And we tried to give a quick overview, and that obviously Joanne will use in our discussions for preparing the next budget. Let's see. Mr. Chairman, do you want to go to your new business, or do you want to go down into the old business?
What do you want to do?
I'm okay with going new business because hopefully those will.
All right. Go ahead, Steve. Start with the first one.
That's a commission issue. Items that constitutes being put on the agenda. You had that discussion in the last couple meetings.
Right.
I think that's a commission. Actually, A and B are commission issues to decide what how the commission wants to run the meetings.
I think what happened is how that issue came about was that we have the public input, but then we had somebody who asked to be put on the agenda, and it turned out that was public input, and that's unfortunate because not that person came in, but the other members felt, or the rest of the public felt, that they weren't really treated fairly. And I guess when someone calls to be put on the agenda, there needs to be a question, you know, from whoever takes those items as to what it constitutes.
I agree.
And so the procedure you would want is when somebody calls us to get put on the agenda, well, Francine usually gets those calls, we turn around and call the chairman to see if whether it's appropriate to be agenda or
email them or whatever.
Yeah.
Call
She's been doing, yeah.
So we can adopt
Right.
it as policy.
Right.
Your second thing, B, then, is
Would we put on the agenda just a one-line item as the subject, or just one word?
that'd be up to the chairman. Then just
Well, I think we should know what that person's coming in.
If the chairman decides that the item is an agenda, or to be put on the agenda versus a public input, then the subject matter that was relayed to whoever the chairman is, that would be the subject matter that would appear on the agenda.
All right, and
B, that's also a
Public input.
commission issue.
We decided we're changing that to one.
One. And the only reason why I asked to put it on the agenda, and I don't know, I don't really have an opinion one way or the other. I was told rather by an individual that sometimes things that are discussed at the meeting would require either them to comment at the latter part of the meeting, so not having that second public input is problematic for them. To have only one at the end of the meeting and have to wait throughout the whole course of the meeting to speak, I don't know, if that, so like I say, that's the only reason why I put it on there, is because I got a call with regard to it, and there was, a problem as far as not being able to comment later on. So that's the only reason I raise it.
Comment?
May I speak?
No.
Is this a public hearing part, or no?
No, it's not. Well,
Do we want to explore what others are doing and come back and decide? We have it on for just the first portion of the meeting.
council has one at the beginning.
They have one, two. Two.
They have two.
They have
Two. They have two.
Well, the schools do.
Two.
Budget committee is 2.
And I only, like I say, I only bring it up because of that, and we can put it off and look to see.
Yeah, let's,
Okay?
you get a list, Francine, from the other committees and such, what they do for public input, please.
And the third one is.
And before next meeting, can we have that?
You want it in your
Just
package, you
email
want it
it.
before the...
Just email it. Shouldn't be that hard or that long. All right, detail fees?
Yeah, as you know, every year, because the detail fees in the contract go up, we review with finance what we are charging for the outside details to make sure the town is not losing money. And then every year what happens is finance puts together the individual cost breakdown, which you should have in your packet there, of what everything costs. It comes up with some numbers, and then the commission reviews what is currently being charged, which is obviously above the rate that the officer gets at a detail, and decides what is an appropriate number so that you're being fair to the contractors, but more importantly, in my mind, you're being fair to the citizens.
Yeah, you're recouping those costs that you should.
Right, so we do this once a year. Obviously, finance has been busy, so we're running a little later than usual looking at it this year. We usually do it, I think, in August.
How come some of us get the stuff and some of us don't?
It should be,
It's not.
should be titled like this.
Yeah, I just saw what you had. I don't have that, and neither does Henry.
Well, why don't we bypass it then?
Either you have it?
I got 2 minutes, speak fast.
All right, let it go next month.
Have to wait.
All right, let it go.
You have another.
And that's, I make a motion to go into non-public for a short. Have what? Oh, sorry.
Quick question. What is the current per hour charge if I wanted to hire a police officer?
Yeah.
Right now, the detail rate is, that we charge is $52 an hour.
Is there a minimum hours, number of
4 hour
hours?
minimum.
$52?
Yeah, 4 hour minimum.
Okay. And what would happen, now what if it were, is that a police officer, and this would be part of his full-time?
No, so this is additional duty.
After duty, or
This is like when you see directing traffic.
right. So if I wanted to have an officer come to my neighborhood and I was willing to pay so it wouldn't distract from servicing the rest of the town, I could do a 4-hour minimum, $52 per hour, and have him come to my house. Right? I mean, theoretically, I could do that? Because I don't want to wait.
That's without a car, though, correct?
Right, yeah, if you want a cruiser, it's $20 per hour.
Well, how is he going to get to my house? I mean,
Well, there's some details, that, for example,
You
like
know.
Public Service is putting
They
in
take
full,
their
they
own
don't
car.
need.
They'll
they don't
drop them
need-
off.
I'll pick them up. All right, I just want to know if that was an option. I'm not waiting 2 years. Maybe, depends on what he says.
All right. I made a motion on public under personnel, RSA 91-A, semicolon 3, Roman numeral 2.
What is it? Huh?
You can see. Sorry. That's right.
You got us thrown out.
They finished?
Right.
All in favor? Aye. All right, it's clear, let's roll.
David, do you have a sense of how long this is going to be?
Wonderful spending this time.
Non-public, for those of us who might want to hear the rest of the agenda, or are you?
No, we're done. This meeting's adjourned. Everybody wanted to go to the school meeting. So that we're just having a real quick
Non-public, and then we're done.
We're done.
You can go to the
Yeah,
meeting, you're not going to miss anything.
You're not gonna miss
You're not
anything.
conduct any more business.
What school?
High school.
Oh.